Ooh. Oh, okay. I got it now. So I really wanted to talk about finding a therapist. And there are a ton of therapists out there, and there are exponentially more clients to go around. So this isn't about you need to find somebody that works at Talk Therapy Center. I want everybody to be able to find people that really fit well, because if you don't fit well, you're not going to have a good experience in therapy. You're probably not going to get much from it. And I really don't want to have a client that comes in that doesn't get much from our therapy because they weren't a good fit. And what ends up happening is that if you come in and get therapy from somebody and it's not a good fit, you're probably going to tell people about it. So the last thing I want to do is go ahead and increase negative marketing. So really what I would encourage people to do is to understand that there are a lot of different types of therapists out there that do therapy in a lot of different ways. So what I'd recommend that you do is start your therapy search like you're going to try to buy a car. What does that end up looking like? It ends up looking like people going through and researching the different types, the different features, the price ranges, whether or not people end up taking insurance, etc., etc. Here's a note about insurance. If you think that every therapist takes your insurance, that is not true. Every therapist that takes insurance has to go through an extensive process that can be months up to a year plus long of making sure that you are who you say you are, you know what you can do, all this, they call it credentialing, which is just making sure that the credentials, the letters behind your name, say that you actually know what you're doing and you didn't just kind of make it through or print it out at Kinko's or something like that. One of the first things that you can do with insurance is call member services and ask them for a list of providers or if they provide any assistance in setting you up with a therapist. Some insurance companies will gladly do this. They'll go through, they'll set you up with the exact person, they'll actually create an appointment for you, and they'll say this is when you get to go. Please make sure that if that happens, you either go or let your therapist know in advance that you're not going to go. Here's the thing about therapists. Therapists can't work 40 hours a week, or they shouldn't. Kind of ethically, they shouldn't work 40 hours a week, which means they shouldn't have 40 clients a week. They shouldn't be seeing people back to back for 40 hours. And the reason is because you really can't do much good for your clients if you're only seeing clients. If the only time that you have to go ahead and focus on your client is in that hour that you're seeing the client, and then you have 40 people per week, which means that your caseload is upwards of, 100 people, then you've got 100 people's stuff that you are not devoting any more time other than the single hour to, which means they're getting shortchanged. If you end up finding somebody that's a therapist that ends up going through and only works, let's say, 15, 20 hours a week, well, then they can go ahead and devote the rest of the 20, 25 hours of a 40-hour work week to looking up your case, to talking with other therapists, to doing research, to kind of mapping it out in their own heads. Some agencies have policies that have their therapists see just a huge number of clients. That's not good for the therapist, cough, cough, burnout, and that's not good for the client, cough, cough, poor service. What ends up happening is that those therapists and those clients, they're not getting what they need. This is how I'd recommend you do your first appointment. Every therapist is going to go ahead and have a bunch of paperwork for you to fill out. Just bite the bullet and go ahead and fill that out. Then go into your first appointment and say, instead of going through my entire history, I have this single problem. Can you go ahead and work on this problem with me? And what you could do is you can go through and see how the therapist works on your problems. If it's somebody that goes through and will just allow you to talk, and they're never going to do anything, and that's not what you want, find somebody else. Let them know this is just a trial process. I'm going through trying out a few different therapists, and it doesn't seem like we're going to be a good match. Now, what happens on the therapist end? Well, if they're a professional, they're going to go through and say, I understand that we're not a good match, and that's okay, because I don't really want to be matched with somebody that's not a good match, because it's not going to do well for either of us. However, if there's somebody that's a little bit more of a business person than a therapist, they might try all the tricks and tips and tools to make sure that you do not go away from them. And I don't know about you, but if that's the way that my therapist is treating me, I'd probably guess that, oh shoot, I should probably get away from this person. Because either one, they're too hard up for clients, which might speak that they're not that great of a therapist, or two, they're too hard up for your money, or the money that's going to come in from you, which might not be a good thing. Could have a really great business person and a really great therapist in one, but be careful. Another way of going about finding a therapist is out of pocket or in the super bill process. What out of pocket really works with is if you just want to go online or you want to talk to a friend and you want to get a referral to a therapist and you're going to go ahead and just pay them cash to go see them, you are going to go ahead and pay their full cash fee rate. If you can't afford it, you can always ask for a sliding scale fee. If you can't afford it, go ahead and just pay. Because what ends up happening is that if you end up finding that perfect therapist for you, yeah, you might be paying a little bit more money, but you might be finding a therapist that might be really good at getting you through what you need to get through in a really short amount of time, or in a reasonable amount of time, or not the rest of your life. Another option is if you do have insurance, call over to your member services and ask them if out-of-network providers are available under your plan. Even if your best friend has Blue Cross and you have Blue Cross, make sure that you call even if they got it, because you might not. Everybody's plans are different. So make sure that you're getting the right one and that you're setting yourself up right. Call over to member services and ask them if they take out-of-network providers. What out-of-network provider means is that sometimes the insurance company checked out that therapist and said, yeah, that therapist is who they say they are. We're not going to have an established contract with them, but if somebody wants to see them, then they can, and we'll go ahead and reimburse a percentage. And that is called the super bill process. Other times, instead of insurance companies going through and kind of vetting the therapist before they do an out-of-network, they just kind of let whoever go through and be a therapist. They say, you know what, if you're licensed, if everything's in order for you, then you can go ahead and see the clients. And that is really, really good news for people out there who really want to see certain therapists. If your insurance company does allow that, awesome. What I'd recommend that you do is get the approval, get the name of who gave you the approval, figure out what percentage they're going to reimburse you, because you're still going to have to pay that therapist that full fee. So you end up paying, let's say, $100. And the insurance company ends up saying that they're going to go ahead and reimburse you 65%. Well, then you're only paying $35 to see your therapist of choice. Sure, it might be more than your $25 copay, but if you wanted to go ahead and see somebody, maybe somebody that was readily available, somebody that had a reasonable caseload, somebody that really was a good match for you, paying that extra $10 might be the best thing that you're ever going to do. What ends up happening after your sessions is that the therapist gives you a really fancy receipt called a super bill. And the super bill will go ahead and go to you. That's a signed receipt from the therapist with all of your information on it that you end up submitting over to your insurance company. Be very careful to make sure that you did all the legwork prior to submitting this form. Make sure that you got the approval. Make sure you got the percentage. Make sure you got the place that you need to send that form back to so that you can go ahead and do that seamlessly. And please, once you finish that first session and get that first super bill, send that receipt over right away. Right away. Don't wait until you got 5 of them, because you might be $500 in the hole by the time your insurance company ends up letting you know that somebody that you talked to didn't know what they were talking about and you weren't actually covered. That happens. That is part of the pain in the butt of working with insurance companies. So make sure you get that over there. Aside from the financial aspect, finding a good therapist might include finding the type of therapy that you need. Just doing a Google search or calling a therapist and asking somebody, hey, what kind of therapy is best for this particular condition? Some people would say, oh, any therapy. Some therapists might be able to cover most conditions. But sometimes you really want a specialist. Sometimes you really want somebody that knows what they're doing with your particular condition. Once you figure that out, then you can go ahead and start searching. You can go ahead and search through that particular type of therapy's webpage. One example of this is EMDR, which is really good for trauma work. And what you can do with EMDR is to pull up their EMDR webpage and look for the therapist in your area. And only certified people through EMDR will be on that page, which means that they've gone through all the training, not just read a single book. Another thing that you could do is go on to Psychology Today and search for therapists by the type of therapy that they do. And that might be able to help you out, or by the type of problem that you're struggling with, the type of whatever. They have a lot of filters on there. Check it out. The last thing that I really want to encourage is that you understand why you're going to therapy and what you want to get out of therapy. Because if you go to therapy and you don't know what you want to get out, you just kind of want to talk about some stuff, you're probably not going to get much out of it. But if you go in and you say, you know what, I'd really like to not get self-conscious when I'm around a new group of people, or I'd really not like to feel calmer when my kids are going very energetic in the afternoon. I'd like to be able to wake up in the morning and get out of bed and not just feel like I just need to stay in bed the entire day. If you know what your goals are, you have something that you can measure, you can have something that you can focus on. One of the biggest things that you could do in your therapy once you've chosen that therapist is focus on the word continuity, the connection between sessions. Some of these issues, you can talk about it for the entire session, not really get anywhere that you need to get, and then sit there and say, well, I guess I can move on to the next thing that I can talk about in the next session, and not get anywhere, and not get anything, and just talk, and just go. It's not going to work out. Don't do that. Continuity between sessions. If you need to fire your therapist, if you need to just say, this isn't working, send an email, text, voicemail, phone call, whatever happens to be. Don't ghost your therapist. Don't go and start having an active caseload with 8 different therapists because you haven't been able to break up with one. Just let them know, hey, this isn't working, or I got where I wanted to get to with you, or whatever happens to be. Do what you need to do for you. Say, hey, this isn't working for me. Whatever it happens to be, just let them know. It can be a simple email, but if you can just let them know and talk to them, then maybe they can go ahead and stop spending any mental energy on your case. They can close your file. They can go ahead and start actively working with other people. And they can understand there's a big part of closure. Therapists are humans too. Imagine you're going to somebody that you're really connected to, as therapists are often very connected to their clients because we are those kind of people, and we're feeling very connected to somebody, and then that person just disappears. Well, in this profession, that's a huge reason for concern. I've had people over the years that have just disappeared, and I still think, I wonder if they're okay. I wonder if they made it. I wonder if there's some issue. Did something happen? I don't know. That's not great to think about. Do your therapist a favor, and if you do need to go ahead and let them know that you're not going to go with them, or you're going to stop therapy, or whatever happens to be, please let them know. Here's a word for the wise. Even if your therapist says that they take your insurance company, call your insurance company and verify it. I have heard nightmare stories about clients going in and are $500,000 in the hole with a particular therapist by the time they get their first bill, because the therapist ended up finding out they didn't take that particular type of insurance. And you probably signed therapy paperwork that said you are going to be responsible for that bill. You do not want creditors coming after you because you have a $1,000 therapy bill. And you don't want to throw away $1,000 when it was only going to take you $50 in copay to go ahead and get to where you got to. Do what you need to do and call over to your insurance company and make sure everything is situated. That phone call over to member services can save you thousands of dollars. Please take that call seriously.
Ooh. Oh? Okay. I got it now.